So in a previous video, I covered the beginning of my relationship with Sarah, my dismissive avoidant ex, and how great she showed up in those first 5 months of the relationship. How seemingly light and almost magical it was, and how I'd never felt so accepted, so seen, and so cared for, and how sure I was that I had finally found my forever person. But then the honeymoon ended. Hi there, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, my name is Travis, and just like you, I am surviving an avoidant discard. So the honeymoon is over and the shit just got real, didn't it? Aside from the disastrous experience of telling Sarah how much I loved her for the first time and getting that really lackluster in a response, the honeymoon phase of the relationship ending basically meant that the masks were starting to come off. We weren't on our best behaviors anymore. Real life is continuing with day-to-day stresses. Conflicts and differences of opinion are starting to creep in, and the attachment wounds are definitely starting to get triggered. It's my guess that it was at this point, right after I told Sarah how much I loved her, that her slow fade and her pullback and her fears started to creep in. And her fears would be something along the lines of fear of engulfment, fear of losing her independence, fear of being fully seen and known. Remember that dismissive avoidants operate in a state called feelings minus their fears. When they first meet you, everything is fantastic. They have got you up on a pedestal. They are riding a dopamine high. Everything's awesome. As soon as the fears start to creep up, and the fears are going to be triggered by things like expectations, conflict, telling them that you love them, that's going to start to creep those fears up. And the dismissive avoidant lives in relationship right in that space between their feelings and their fears. Now on my side, when I didn't hear that I love you back, that's when the anxious side of my fearful avoidant attachment style got triggered. So primarily out of there is fear of abandonment. Also, fear of betrayal is in there as well, meaning, my subconscious is telling me sooner or later, she's going to hurt you. Sooner or later, she's going to pull away. So as soon as I didn't hear that I love you, that little voice started to get a little bit louder, telling me those things. And now that the honeymoon phase is over in our relationship, technically that means we're in the dating phase. And there actually was quite a bit of dating, a lot of activities, a lot of restaurants, a lot of going out to go bowling, going to concerts and whatnot. I really only saw Sarah on the weekends, and occasionally there would be the odd weeknight, maybe sleepover. This was our only full year together as well, 2023, and it was marked by first holidays together. So things like our birthdays, Easter, our anniversary, Christmas. This was also the year where we traveled a lot. For our first trip, we did a few nights tent camping in August of 2023, and from what I remember, that was a really fun trip. I took Sarah to one of my favorite places in the Rocky Mountains, and we had a couple of day hikes, some campfires, and just some nice quiet time. It was really, really nice. Camping is one of my happy places where I truly feel calm, and I can just feel all of the tension and anxiety just melt off of me. Let me chop some firewood, sit in front of a campfire for a while, golden. When we returned from that trip, I dove headfirst into a brand new 3D printing e-commerce business that I had been working on. And as I recall, this was sort of the first time that Sarah and I had started to have some serious discussions about money. This was also the time where the first mentions of us moving in together began. And I think this really kicked off the power struggle stage of our relationship. In October of 2023, I took Sarah to my second favorite place in the Canadian Rockies, which is Banff, for a hotel trip. It was during this trip where the cracks really started to show in our relationship, and the attachment wounds were really beginning to get triggered in both of us. I witnessed the very first instance of what I would call avoidant behavior, or a complete shutdown with Sarah. So we had been out doing the tourist thing all day, hikes and whatnot, and I had noticed that she was really, really sullen, really quiet. Every time I asked her, what's bothering you, she would answer with fine or nothing, but you could totally tell something was off. And this went on all day. We finally went and sat down for dinner, and I will never forget this. The hostess sits us down, we put our jackets on the back of the chair or whatnot. I sit down and I look across from her, and the look of contempt, and I can't describe it any better, just sheer contempt literally sat me back in my chair. And at this point, I think I was done asking nicely. Most fearful avoidants like myself, you'll understand this, that sometimes we get to a certain point and that's it. I was done asking nicely. Again, what is your deal? I got more of the same thing, fine, nothing, and I was done. And it was super awkward because we're in this small restaurant that's like very intimate. There's people all around. Now, I feel like today, knowing what I know about avoidance and myself, that I would have been able to handle this in a much better way earlier in the day. But at that moment, I was working with what I knew, which wasn't very much. And I have to say, I handled this situation poorly. So I didn't want to sit there and have dinner with her, with this person who's looking at me with just utter contempt. So I said, let's go, we're leaving. And she wouldn't leave, so I left. But I went back to the hotel and checked us out, packed up the car, and waited for her to come back. She didn't come back. I'm not sure if she ate or not, but I started walking back towards the restaurant and came across her coming the other way. And I told her that we're leaving. Again, I handled this really poorly. So we had a 4-hour drive from Banff back home, and she was completely silent the entire time. But honestly, at that point, I was so annoyed that she had basically blown up our holiday and refused to tell me what it was that had her obviously so upset. I wouldn't have listened to it anyway. There was about an hour left in the trip, and she finally said something to the effect of, you didn't have to check us out, we could have just slept on it, etc., etc. And I completely shut that down. I wasn't listening to any of it. I refused to allow my reaction, and in hindsight, an overreaction, to become the focus of what was going on right now. And this was going to turn out to be a theme for us throughout the rest of our relationship. Sarah's behavior, I react, we end up fighting about, I'm reacting to her. We never got back to the original behavior. So you can see this is really where the cracks really started to show, and the attachment wounds were really triggered at this point. Now, when we got home that night, we went our separate ways. She actually called me the next day and attempted to offer an explanation as to what had gone on with her. Now, according to her, the reason that she was upset was that in the past, I had been to Banff with other women. If you're in California, this is sort of like you being upset that the man you're seeing has been to the beach with other women. I mean, in Alberta, everybody goes to Banff. I guess she had spoken to both her brother and her father as well, who both told her, you're lucky that he didn't just leave you in Banff. Can't argue with it. Still, after this incident and the explanation, there was no apology whatsoever. So because the Banff trip had gone so well, we decided that for our next holiday, we should fly somewhere. So we decided to fly to Mexico in December of 2023 to end the year. Now I say we, but basically for whatever reason, Sarah planned and also paid for this trip. And even though I was willing and quite capable of paying for my share of the trip, she just wouldn't have it. And looking back, I think maybe there might have been some guilt there regarding what happened in Banff. You know, she didn't actually apologize, so maybe this was her way of apologizing. I don't know. Maybe the dismissive avoidants out there who are watching this can maybe comment on that one. Now, believe it or not, for me, this was my very first beach vacation. I had never been anywhere tropical, never been on a beach, never been under a palm tree, never smelt or felt ocean breeze. So for me, this trip was amazing. Anytime you can get away from winter and snow in Canada in December to be on a beach in anywhere is awesome. According to Sarah, there was terrible weather. It was too windy. You know, there was a lot of complaining a little bit. For the most part, though, I really enjoyed this trip with her, and I had a lot of fun, and I think she did enjoy the trip for the most part, except for the weather. So there it is, guys. There is the 1 full year that Sarah and I spent together. It saw the end of our honeymoon phase, and we moved into the dating phase and a little bit into the power struggle. I wouldn't say that the writing was on the wall yet, that this relationship was doomed, but the cracks were definitely starting to show. So that's going to wrap for this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. I really appreciate you following along with my healing journey. I hope that you are all taking care of yourselves. Thank you. I will see you in the next video.